Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Miss Camay Show. I am your host, Miss Camay, and I'm broadcasting live from the entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada, as you all know all too well. Today, I have an amazing, just much accomplished guest on my show, Matt Paknis. Matt, welcome to the Miss Camay Show today.
Thank you, Ms. McKay.
How long, well, let me just say this. I know you're a senior management consultant. Like I said, you are very accomplished. You focus on lessening bullying in the workplace, and that is really the topic that I want to chat about today. I could easily interview you for an hour, and going through your bio and reading everything that you've done. You're so accomplished. You've done so much in the community. You're also an author. You've compiled a book as well that we'll talk a little bit about later in the interview. You have spoken publicly about being abused as a child. We know that about you. And you've transcended childhood bullying and the death of your mother with teamwork and leadership. So talk about that a little bit. Explain that. What does that mean for our audience who might not understand that?
Well, my mom was diagnosed with melanoma when I was about 9 years old. And melanoma is a skin cancer. It's very deadly. And it was stage 4. It was in her lymph system. So that's pretty much a death sentence. And she went in and had radical surgeries, had her lymph system removed, really changed her body. Obviously sent our family into a tailspin. I have a sister that's 4 years older than me and a brother that's 5 years younger than me. And so, neither of them was in my peer group. But my dad was extremely stressed for obvious reasons. My mom was ill. She was dependent on my family. I was 9 years old. I was in the office when the doctor told her that, that looks like melanoma. And if that's melanoma, you'll probably have about a year. No bedside manner. He was about 80 years old. My mom broke down. I didn't know what she was breaking down about, but we all started crying. My brother, my sister, and I were in the same room. We then went into, obviously, it was very stressful, sort of traumatic. I don't know if you've ever seen the ACEs scores, but they're acute childhood experiences. And it states that there are 10 of them. And I guess if you have 4 or more, you have a chance that your life expectancy is going to be reduced to about 60 years old, about 20 years below the average. I had 9. I had 9 of the 10, but it didn't appear that way to the public. And so from my about 4th grade, I was a high functioning kid up till about 4th grade. And then all this crazy stuff happened. I was obviously vulnerable. I was targeted by a predator, a pedophile, and I was assaulted sexually as a kid when I was 9 years old. I really didn't have anywhere to turn. My mom noticed there was something drastically wrong with my school performance and just drop off and, focus. I was OCD. I was pulling my hair out, classic things that all reflect this. And so then she finally, I think after 3 or 4 years, I went to see a counselor. And with that counselor who, I was very fortunate because a lot of people get into that role to exploit kids. This was a very good person. And, I was able to disclose. The disclosing rules and laws were not the same. He did not have to report at the time, but he built me up to the point where I was able to stop. And I had a growth spurt. By the time I was in the 8th grade, I think I was maybe 6 feet, about 190, 200 pounds. I was pretty solid. I was undefeated in wrestling. And, emotionally, he gave me a lot of security, treated me like an adult, spoke to me on a very mature basis about a lot of different things. I think mature communication and dialogue is really key to a lot of these problems. And fortunately, I had exposure to that. And the other thing he did was he gave me intelligence tests, and I felt I was a complete idiot because I couldn't concentrate. I had all these things going on in my mind, which happens to a lot of kids that are assaulted and abused or going through trauma. And he actually made me take the test 2 or 3 times because I scored so highly on them. I think he thought it was luck.
It was almost,
So
almost unbelievable. You scored so well.
yeah, exactly. He said, "No, this doesn't add up." So then I stabilized for about a year. When I was in ninth grade, there was no abuse happening. I was in football, wrestling, and track at a very good high school, Madison High School in New Jersey. And then when I was a sophomore, I came under the tutelage of Ted Monica, who was our head coach. He was a legend. He just passed. I was one of his eulogists. He was 91. He died in March. And just the structure, the unity, the connection, the sense of obligation, support, sacrifice, commitment to a cause larger than myself, finding out, really identifying who I was. I was a big kid. I was pretty smart, pretty strong, had good feet. My mom was a great athlete. I think I may have inherited some of her agility. My dad was just a big, very forceful man. And so, you know, those things just sort of came together, and my grades went through the roof. I think the best grade I got from 5th to ninth grade was probably a B. The lowest grade I got from 10th grade through 12th grade was probably a B plus. And then my senior year, I was captain of 2 of the 3 sports. I was captain of the track team 2 years. My mom that spring was experiencing a lot of headaches, and she went in the hospital in August, and her body was riddled with melanoma. So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
just a matter of time, and we were 8-0. We were on a 33 game consistent win streak over my 3 years, and I was a sole 3-year starter. And my sophomore year, we ended up 3rd ranked in the state. Junior year, second ranked in the state at the following final state poll. And then my senior year, we were the number 1 ranked team in the state of New Jersey. And that was an unheard of accomplishment. We were like Hoosiers of New Jersey football for a New Jersey size school. I was one of the co-captains. We were 8-0. They called me in to say goodbye to my mom. She was losing consciousness on Sunday. She died on Tuesday. She was buried on Friday. That Saturday, we had our playoff game against Orange, featuring the fastest kid in the state who ended up playing in the NFL for about 12 years. Then that Sunday, we had our SATs, because that was the SAT day. So we had our, college board tests that Sunday morning. And then we had our traditional Thanksgiving rival, Milburn, to play on that following Thursday. So being a part of
So let me stop you there. I want to go back a little bit, because you talk about, this process with your mother and getting this news about your mother, and you had all of this going on in your life, and you were succeeding and you were doing very well, and you actually had a lot on your plate. And so how did you manage all of that? How did you manage, the news about your mother, and then at this intricate time when, she's losing consciousness, you're called in, to say goodbye to her, and then she does pass away, and then you continue to move forward, which is what your mother would want you to have done. But how, do you remember that? How did you, for our audience that are watching, because I've lost my mother as well, and I remember that time, and I remember a year, I don't really remember the year after she passed away. Everything is kind
How
of
old were you?
What was that?
How old were you, Miss Camay?
I was well into my 30s. I was a grown adult at that time. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, how did you manage that? How did you?
Well, number one, I was fortunate in that I didn't have to worry about where my next meal was coming from. I had the security of a roof over my head and a meal. My father was dedicated to us. My father, obviously grew up in a very difficult household, and a lot of those traits carried over, unfortunately, and he didn't address them. So, naturally, being that stressed, I think I was an easy target. I have a big head, and I'm a big overall. So I grew into my head. My head was really big when I was little, and I think it was a good target. The back of it was a pretty good target for my dad. So, but we straightened that out. I was in 8th grade, and this counselor gave me the emotional separation I needed. So I became a pretty high functioning
we have a little bit of technical difficulty here. So I want to apologize for that. Hopefully Matt will be able to unfreeze himself. He potentially, I think he's coming back.
I'm not sure what happened.
Yeah,
But
are you there? I can, perfect. Okay, so the last thing that we heard you talk about is you were 8 years old, and you the counselor that you were seeing at the time, helped you with your emotional separation.
Yeah, I was in 8th grade, not 8 years old, in the 8th grade.
Great, okay.
My abuse started when I was 9 years old, and then it ran, unfortunately, for a couple of years, and it was multifaceted. Like I said, I had, I think, 8 or 9 of the ACEs assessment, acute childhood experiences. And so, just addressing those, getting confident, and then getting involved in sports, which gave me a family outside of the family. I was at school every day till 6 o'clock, and then I'd come home, and it was pretty structured. My last period class in all 4 years of high school, I had to study hall, so I was able to get a little head on homework and things like that. But
yeah.
So I had a highly structured. It was a public school, and then when I got my SAT scores back my senior year, my mom had passed by that time, but 2 weeks later, Harvard came to recruit me, and I went to see the guidance counselor, and I go, "Is Harvard in the Ivy League?" And he goes, "Yeah, Harvard's in the Ivy League."
Yeah, yeah, just a little bit.
So, and then the rest of the Ivies came in, and the service academies, and then I had interest from really big Division I-A programs as well. And so, it was like a complete turnaround. Unfortunately, my mom never got to see those things. I'd like to believe that she does know, but
Of course, she absolutely does. She absolutely does, no doubt about that.
She helped me through all those things, and then, my dad was lost, and he got involved with my stepmother within like a month, and so that sort of disbanded our family, our immediate family, and I became more independent. It was a struggle, but it was tough. But I think getting to college, I selected a good distance. I went to Brown, which was about 4 hours away. I had a new team to be involved in. I got involved in fraternity while I was there. Yeah, they'd actually been removed from campus. I didn't join as a freshman. I was worried, honestly, that they were going to kill somebody. They were pretty crazy. And but I joined as a sophomore or junior, and they elected me as president when I was pledging. And we got the house back. We were the first house in Brown to get the house back.
Nice.
And so getting involved in that, seeing my team from high school, we had decent teams at Brown, but they weren't championship teams. They were very close. And seeing that clear distinction, with that extra level of what's really required in an exceptional group of people versus, a team that's successful, but not great. Sort of got me pretty interested in this kind of thing, and then being involved in that organization. And then in high school, I was a part of, I was selected to be a chairperson of a very unique program that utilized junior and senior peer leaders, counselors, to address all the state mandated health requirements. And so it fulfilled the state requirements, but it really utilized junior and senior leaders. And I was the chairperson of that my senior year. And then we went around to different schools, public schools, and introduced that. So again, that was about culture. It reduced dropouts. Ideally, it reduced drug and alcohol abuse, suicides, bullying, violence in the work. The term violence was much more common than bullying at the time.
Right.
Bullying, it would be bullying, considered. So really, my whole life sort of geared up. And then, I studied organizational behavior at Brown with economics and a minor in architecture. My senior year, a new staff came in. They encouraged me to play in the NFL. I had tryouts with the Giants and the Pats. They didn't materialize, so the staff offered me a job on there. And that was really my dream. I had been, I think, a teaching assistant for 6 or 7 semesters for 4 different classes at Brown. And I loved teaching. I loved football. had meant a lot to me. So it just seemed like even though I worked on Wall Street in the summers to help me pay for school, and that seemed like the natural track for people. A lot of people thought I should get my head investigated. I got into coaching, and that led to some exceptional experiences. Like I told you, I was offered a job at the University of Washington with Don James. This was 1987, coaching linebackers, and then I was offered a assistant offensive line coaching job with Penn State and Joe Paterno, and they were reigning national champs. So I took that one. And in retrospect, that was the right one, because in 2011, I got an MBA. I came back. I never saw Sandusky doing anything bad, but those kids were always around. And my intuition was saying something was wrong. But when you're 24, 25 years old, and I'm not trying to make an excuse, and you're working with a national championship team and people that are, almost like deified, you're like, well, there's no way that could be happening. 2011, the guy I played next to at Brown gives me a call. I'm on a international trip. I get back at about midnight, and we always teased each other. We called with prank calls saying we were, I was like Pedro Martinez, the pitcher for Red Sox, or I was Bill Clinton, or, you name it. And
I do that to my sister all the time. She goes by the name Monica at her job, and so when I call her job, I always ask for Lewinsky. Is Lewinsky there? And when she jumps on the phone, she answers the phone. Hi, this is Monica, and I'm like, hey, Monica, how's Bill doing? Doing? So you mentioned that you studied organizational behavior, economics, minor in architecture.
Right.
You have facilitated corporate leadership, team building programs. Like I said in your introduction, you are very accomplished, very very much a scholar, very successful in the collegiate arena, and now as a grown adult entrepreneur and consultant, you've gone on to do so many things. But why? Like, what I want to ask you specifically is why bullying? Why are you focused on the topic of bullying in the workplace? Why that topic?
Well, I was beginning to share how this sort of Mark Twain said the two greatest days in your life are the day you're born and the day you figure out why. So I went and got my MBA at URI, and I coached. I was a head sub-varsity coach and assistant offensive line coach, and University of Rhode Island. And I had to do an internship, and I did. It was accredited class, but I was creating team building programs. Being part of a team was a big factor in my resiliency, and I was primarily interested in working with at-risk youth.
Okay.
But at the beginning of the 1990s, teamwork was a buzzword, and the campus where I was working also had a corporate retreat center, and there were a lot of companies coming down looking for team building exercises. And the director of the campus asked me if I'd be interested in doing that. So I started doing that, and those companies started asking me to come in-house and customizing things for them. And it really revolved around team building, but also selecting, particularly in very technical organizations in the medical field and high-end manufacturing and high tech, who with extremely high technical skills can also lead and manage. So that sort of became my expertise. While doing that, I also put together a 50-hour certificate program. I was asked to put together a program like a modified MBA for Brown. It was for undergraduates, graduates, but also the local business owners. And I ran that for 12 years, and we had about 2,500 people go through that. And they asked me, a lot of those clients, big clients, international clients, asked me to come internal to work with them on upgrading the quality of their management practices. While I was
were those entities, were they having workplace bullying problems?
I wasn't asked to come in for that specific reason. I was usually asked to come in just to upgrade the overall consistency and quality of management. While there, and these engagements were long-term, 16, 17, 18 years in retrospect, which is pretty much unheard of. But and I ended up going all around the world. People would shut the door and say, Matt, you know, and I wasn't an employee.
Right.
3 or
Right.
4 of the places asked me to become a full-time employee, and I took a couple of them up on it. And that's when you really see some crazy stuff. But in a
Yeah.
lot of consulting practices, they, you know, people would shut the door and say, Matt, can I share a story with you? And they would just tell me these horrific stories about these abusive managers. And it was pretty consistent, you know, and in the good organizations where I would address it, and I always addressed it and elevated it. When I addressed it and elevated in a good organization, that person was gone. You know, they had a process in place that
Okay.
was, you know, pretty much, and the workers knew that
Right.
they could do that. In the
So
bad
you,
organizations,
so I guess bullying in the workplace was introduced to you through your consulting work that you were
exactly,
doing at these particular organizations where somebody would trust you, you know, they felt comfortable enough to come to you behind closed doors and say,
right,
hey, like this is going on.
right.
And so that's
And then
how
it
it
was
was.
my obligation to elevate that. You know, I would never sit
Right.
on it. And then, you know, either the bully got it or I got it. In the bad organizations, you know, I was thanks, but no thanks, Matt. You know,
Yeah.
and you saw it; it was systemic. Now,
Sure.
fortunately, I think majority of my companies, you know, they did not want that there. But there are a lot of now. I've been in over 1,000 companies. You know, I've had over 10,000 engagements in my life.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are a lot of bad actors out there, and it seems to be
Yeah.
getting worse for some
Yeah.
reason.
Well, I think back when I was bullied in the workplace in 2014, 2015, I started doing research because I work in law. I work in insurance defense litigation, personal injury
Mhm.
litigation. And so when I started researching the topic, because I just was like, I know this has to be illegal. Like I'm meeting all of the elements of a personal injury lawsuit, loss of
Right.
enjoyment of life, mental distress, mental health problems, you know, the list
It's
goes on
also
and on.
discriminatory. And it's
Yeah,
also, they'll often do things to the person that's targeted that no one else gets. That's
correct,
discrimination. You know,
correct,
that's
correct,
inappropriate
correct.
behavior.
So when I started researching the topic, I mean, I really could not find anything on the internet about bullying in the workplace. So like you just said that, you know, it seems to be getting worse. And what I'm seeing, and like the National Workplace Bullying Coalition, the nonprofit where I'm chair of outreach and education, people are becoming empowered and powerful to talk about their bullying in the workplace. So, you know, we're advocates, we're building confidence, we're giving people a voice that can
Yep.
actually come forward and, you know, they're no longer afraid to say, you know, I'm being bullied at XYZ place of employment.
Right.
And like, I need help. I need it to end.
Because you can't go
But
to HR
correct.
in a
Oh,
lot
that
of
is,
places.
yes, that is a great statement. That is a great
Although
statement.
there are good and decent people in HR. I don't want to stereotype everybody, but
Correct. Correct.
but
Correct.
but often HR, the way I've seen it is they're the perpetrators in many cases.
Yes, and you know, HR again, you know, there are decent, empathetic, very compassionate people that work in those roles, but their job, again, you know, they're hired by this company and they are told this is what you're supposed to do, and if
Yeah.
you don't do this, you know what's going to happen. So you have people who are in, I mean, it's almost like HR professionals are somewhat bullied as well, because they're told, you know, this is what your job is, this is what you're supposed to do. Their job is to protect the entity, the company.
Yeah.
Their job is not to protect the target. Their job is
Well, I
not
think
to protect
that's,
that person.
yeah, I think that's their interpretation. I think when I first started in the business, HR was considered like bipartisan. You know, they were
Right,
moderate. They were in the middle. They were just trying to find justice and equity. Now, usually the justice and equity did lean towards management, and everyone said, well, you know, really there. But now I think there's no pretense. On the
yeah,
first day, a lot of HR managers will just say, "This is a hire at will state. You don't like
correct,
it. There's the door."
right,
Uh,
correct. And
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 we're
were
here to
you and were you on time for work today? Because if you
yeah,
weren't, then you were late. And then that's a mark on your attendance record, right?
Yeah, so it's, that dignity, this whole dignity at workplace, which I also know you're a part of. And I
Yes,
think
yes,
every state has that movement is very important, very important.
yes. Thank you for that.
But
Thank you.
but the way this is really, galvanized with me is I beginning to say I came back from this trip to Europe, and my friend who's always busting chops left a message. I picked it up at about 12:15 in the morning, and it said, Matt, I knew it was him, obviously, with his voice. He's trying to disguise his voice, but it said, Matt, this is Jerry Sandusky. I've got a problem. Can you call
Oh
me?
no.
And I'd been out of the country, so I had no idea what he was calling. So I went online and I read all the court documents, and I stayed up all night. And it was 24 years. I had built this international business, and I'd left coaching because I was really turned off by just the power dynamics at Penn State, and I never saw pedophilia. I never saw sexual molestation. But when I read that, it all fell in my lap, and I said, well, that's based on my background and my experience and exposure to them. That's what I'm really here for, is to give people the awareness and the understanding and the confidence so they can really identify,
Yeah.
address, prevent, and transcend all forms of bullying, including sexual molestation of children. And I clump all those things together. Workplace bullying is the same power and control dynamic as pedophilia, as racism, as domestic violence. They
Right.
all belong in the same cluster, and they're all perpetrated by the same sort of weak person. And
Yes.
so that's where I think we really have to go. I'm also concerned with, claiming some people I think that suffer that really sincerely want to change. It appears as
Yes.
though it's not a disease, it's a choice. But once that choice is made, it becomes a compulsion.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
and they often self-select to get themselves off the street because they know
Right.
they're not safe to the community.
Right.
Those are what
We
the
have,
sincere ones do. The unsincere ones try to lie, and make up
yeah,
a show.
there are bullies. One of our board members actually works internally within organizations who have identified a bully in their workplace. And I've even consulted, or excuse me, I've in my webinar that I teach on workplace bullying, one of the first activities that I have my attendees take is a bullying behavior profile. And it asks them about, I think 15 questions about their behavior, and then they add up their score, and it tells them whether their, behavior can potentially be, interpreted as a bully. And
Right.
I've had, volunteers who volunteer, to share their score. They are blown away. They are like, wow, it's like revelation to them. They've never stopped to think that their behavior is being communicated as them being
It's
a bully.
interesting because bullying and narcissism go hand in hand, and
Yeah,
often, narcissists can't self-assess, uh, and so having a kind of tool that wakes them up and will really help them change, it's got to be
yeah,
pretty powerful.
yes,
Um,
yes. I totally agree. I totally agree with you. It is an epidemic in our country, and it is claiming the lives of the American workforce, us, the people that are there on the ground floor doing the job.
yeah,
Those are the people.
I was just
What
going
was
to
that?
say I was in one company where a gentleman came in, shut the door, and he said, Matt, I understand what you're trying to do here. No one's tried to do this before, and you have my 100% support. Anything you need, I will give it to you. Well, I ended up leaving that organization, and I'm not saying this was because I left, but after I left, he committed suicide. That gentleman who came and saw me.
Wow.
So
Well,
it's
and that's
real. It's
yeah,
real.
yes. We have a hashtag with NWBC and DAWA, the Dignity at Work Act. Not dying for work, hashtag not dying for work. So for those of you who are watching, for those of you who want to support myself, Matt, the Dignity at Work Act, or the National Workplace Bullying Coalition, that is our hashtag. And we've had
Or
some
who need help, or people that need help, right?
correct, Correct. So
There are
we've
also
had,
services there.
yes, we've had some people, comment about the hashtag, not dying for work. And now we've added another hashtag. It's that serious, because like you just said, it is that serious. The lives of our American workforce are being claimed by bullying in the workplace. It is a fact. There is a lot of research on the topic. It's definitely happening. You, back in 2017, Matt, you compiled and circulated a manuscript that included cases and stories describing your personal academic, athletic, coaching, teaching, professional and consulting experiences like you've shared with us. The title of that book, it was actually published by Simon & Schuster, which is, great accolades there.
It was published by Postel Press, which is sort of an imprint, or they get distributed by Simon & Schuster.
Okay, so, got it. Yeah.
But Postel Press is they're a good publisher too,
Yes.
But it was distributed by Simon & Schuster.
Simon & Schuster, correct. The title of that book, How to Stop Abuse at Work and Build Exceptional Organization, Successful Leaders Aren't Bullies. So why did you name your book Successful Leaders Aren't Bullies? Why did you name your book that?
Well, to be honest, I took that manuscript. It's a long story, but
could be in our second interview.
I've been writing those cases since like '94 when I first started doing the Brown program, and we used case-based learning with all our classes. And so, and even before then, like I said, I considered paternal a bully. I had severe bullies that I dealt with when I was a child. So it's been an ongoing theme my whole life. Yeah. I submitted this manuscript, and the company, and my senior editor said she'd been in the industry for about 50 years. She said she'd never seen it. But I had a contract within a month. But they came back to me and said, can you write this book? They read all my stuff. They went on my podcast. They went on, online. They read all my work, and they gave me the title of the book. Said, can you write this title? And I said, absolutely. Okay. And so that's how that worked.
That came about. Wow.
And we talked about a second book about how do you deal with bullies in your personal life. The first book is really about work. How do you address workplace bullying? The second one.
I know how you deal with bullies in your personal life. You meet them out in the alley, right?
No, I can't advocate that.
Matt, we could definitely chat for, easily an hour, and we just don't have the time today. I'm so grateful to have connected with you. Like I said, you are so accomplished. I'm still watching your content. I know you have a blog that offers relief and response from abuse and bullies. And for those of you who are watching, you can read Matt's blog. Go to his website, mattpaknis.com, and his blog is at mattpaknis.blogspot.com. You can connect with him on Facebook, on Twitter. He is on YouTube. He's on LinkedIn. If he's the only, like you said, you are the only Matt Paknis around. So if you Google Matt Paknis, and I really encourage you guys to do that. He offers a lot of tools, a lot of resources. You'll find his TEDx talk, which I actually just watched yesterday, which was very informative. You are a very eloquent speaker. You really offer a lot of tools, a lot of resources, and a lot of help on the topic of bullying. And I'm so grateful that you're sharing your platform with us.
Can we just leave the people with the 5 steps to help them overcome abusive relationships?
Yes, let's close with that. That's perfect.
Real quick. Yes. The first one is you got to share your secrets with a licensed expert in trauma. Now, I know that may be hard to get to,
but it's possible.
But once you get the secrets out, that's possible. Number 2 is to identify, if you keep a lot of stuff in, your thinking gets a little distorted. And so your cognitive distortions, those traumas and that abuse can make you look at people and things the wrong way. So you really have to clarify and separate facts from opinions in your own head. That you may have also acquired some behaviors to help you deal with that are just getting in the way. So it's starting to choose. The fourth step is to choose healthier options, healthier behaviors in the present moment, which leads to ultimately a healthier outcome. And lastly, that would mean surrounding yourself with healthier people, so that you're in a good place. And
Yes.
it's possible. You're looking at. I think I'm taking a big jump here, but I think you're looking at two people that were able to do that. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
I think
Absolutely.
if we can
Absolutely.
help you in any way, or if there's any of the organizations that came up that can help you, we'd be more than willing to do that. It's a good
Yes.
movement. It's time for
Yes.
everyone to be respected and treated with dignity.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing those 5 steps. I will post those down in the comments for those of you who might have missed those. I will also post comments on how you can connect with Matt across his social media platforms. And I'm also going to post that TEDx YouTube video in the comments as well, so you guys can watch that. Please connect with him. Please reach out to him. He is definitely a resource, you guys. If you are being bullied in the workplace, if you've got some things that you really need to talk about, he is definitely somebody that you can reach out to get help, like he said. Thank you so much, Matt, for your time today. I so appreciate it. Thank you for joining me. Thanks so much
Thank
for
you, Ms.
watching
Camay.
this Camay show, you guys. We will see you next week, Wednesday, same place, same time, 2 p.m. right here on Zoom.
Peace.
Bye, Matt.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good seeing you.